All right, we are live. I hope. Welcome. Happy Friday. We're going to do a little editing today. I'm Daniel Norton, if you don't know, and you've stumbled upon my site out here in the wilderness. Let me know how I sound and all that. I'm getting a warning as usual saying I'm not putting out enough juice to the internet, but what do I know? Let's see if I can make this thing bigger. Last time I was able to make the chat bigger. Let's see if I can do this. Pop out chat. There we go. And then I can get the plus size. No, that doesn't make it bigger. Someday I'll learn how to make it bigger, but right now the chat is small. Okay, not gonna worry about it. I will, if you see me squinting in this direction, it's because I'm looking at the chat. Hey Ben, what's going on? Uh-oh. Thanks. Yeah, sure. Like and subscribe, and I'll do all the other good stuff if you're here. Let me know who's out there. Sound is fine. Good, good, good. I don't know if I mentioned this last time I did it. I have this new audio interface. Excuse me. I had been going through. Oh, let me know if my lips seem to be in sync with my audio. Looks like it's off here. Hitting the properties button for a second. Nope, that's not how you do it. The best thing you can do whenever you're doing a live stream with OBS is to start messing with settings while you're in the middle of it. That's definitely always required. Oh yeah, I don't have a delay on this. I think it's 260 milliseconds. I think is what it's supposed to be. Okay. Oh yeah, that looks better already. Well, it'll take a second to catch up to you guys, but that should look better now. Good night from Portugal. Good night. All right. It's already getting dark here because it is the winter in New York, and we're expecting a huge storm. So we'll see what happens. A windy storm at that. It's supposed to be very, very cold. But for now, we have this nice warm computer generating heat here, and we're going to do a little chat. If you guys have any questions about just anything, but I figured I was going to do some editing today that, we could chat while we do it. Let me know if you guys like this kind of stuff. I think I might start to do this more in 2022 here. Okay. Oh, what happened? That's nothing. Okay, so here we go. Looks in sync from there. Okay, good. So I mean, it's off by like a few, like 200 milliseconds, which I guess is not huge, especially in a live stream. But I like to see myself. and Seth will give me a hard time if my voice doesn't line up. Let me just say. So I had been going through the Nikon, just like plugging my mic right into it. But then what happened a couple times was I forgot to charge my battery. And it died in the middle of doing a chat, and then all of a sudden I lost my audio. So I've got this new audio interface, which is pretty cool. But the Revelator, and it seems pretty nice. Anyways, I had some Z9 shots. It'll make it even warmer. Oh yeah, what did I shoot with the Z9? That was I think I already edited those. Well, I'll see if I can jump into those later. These are from the Z6. So this is actually, let me jump to my thing here. This is actually the shoot that I did for the latest OnSet video. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's on Adorama TV. Check that out. Basically, oh yeah, big fan of man Gavin's. Missing one of those lives with you too. Oh yeah, I know. It'd be great to do something together. Well, Gavin is rumor has it Gavin will be doing some more live streams. So. And I will be back on the 20th, so next Thursday. So if you're around on the 20th, I will be live streaming for Adorama, actually. That'll be fun when we're going to do speedlights. Okay, I am using 22. I've updated to Capture One 22. It's different, a little different. It's not super different, though, at least for the way that I use Capture One. So I'll point out some of the things I see differently, working differently here. There's more features, of course, that I haven't quite delved into yet. That will, every time we do one of these, I'll kind of use more stuff, I'm sure. Thank you, Ben. All right, so this is Mia. The whole point of this shoot here was going to be I have these little, you guys can see them behind me. I'll make myself bigger. See this color on the wall back there? The blue, nope, backwards, blue and orange. Those are these nanlite tubes. And they make all different size ones, but these little ones, I was fascinated with like how well I could make just a regular portrait with it. So we kind of played around a little bit to create a couple of different portraits here. We had a lot of fun, so it's a fun video. We start off kind of trying to just create more of a traditional portrait, and then we work our way into using all the funky colors. So we're going to jump into Capture One 22, which is where we're at right now. I have all the files over here on the side. I've already done the thing that well, yeah, I'll redo it. That I usually do. Of course, now it's going to crash because something's spinning. Okay. Capture One is spinning up on me. Good afternoon. What's going on, Leon? Okay. Oh. Oh, that wasn't what I wanted to do. Oh, hold on. There we go. Okay. Okay. So I'm just resetting everything. What happened was because I needed to make a thumbnail, I went through these quickly and just kind of did a quick like edit where I didn't change anything. I just like went through and picked the ones I liked. So I had some of them numbered, but I'm going to start from scratch. So whenever I'm starting, if you're new here or if you're not, this will be a refresher. Because I'm making myself bigger. Whenever I'm starting with Capture One, and the way that I like to edit down my images is I always do it in a subtractive way. So I don't look for the best one. I get rid of all the ones that aren't the best. And then in the end, what I'm stuck with, or stuck with, what we will say, in the end are the best ones. So you don't have to have that like, oh, is this one the best? I just keep going through and I remove the ones that are clearly not as good as the ones around it, and eventually you come down to the best. So here we go. Now, finally to editing. Somebody's going to write in a comment when they watch this video later on, this moment in the video is when it starts. But anyways, okay, so, as usual, I have a black frame here. So what I do is I select everything, that's just Command A, and I'm going to set them all at 3 stars. The number of stars you set it at is really irrelevant. The reason why it's 3 stars is because it gives me room to move back and forth. If there is a shot that I do not like, I'm going to make it 2 stars. And if there's a shot that's just like absolutely bad, like out of focus or something like that, I'll often make that 1 star, although I don't always do that. So basically what will happen is, like if I come up here and I make this black frame 2 stars, well, that's fine, right? But that doesn't really help me with my reduction. So what I do is I actually go up here in my search. I'm in the upper right hand corner here. You can see my mouse this time, right? Okay. And I do 3 stars or higher. So now anything that is less than 3 stars, it will disappear, right? So let's make this one 3 stars again so you can see it disappear. All right. What I have found with Capture One 22, by the way, and I don't know if it's just because it's getting used to my computer, is I feel like it's a little bit slower on some of the processes than 21 was on my computer. I'm using a kind of an old MacBook. It's like a 2019 MacBook Pro. So I'm curious how this will work on my M1 MacBook, which I also have, but I haven't had a chance to mess with it yet. So I'm assuming it's going to be faster there than it would be here. So it's not slow, but it definitely, I can feel it, All right, so I'm set now at 3 stars or higher. So when I click on my first image, I can see that it's a black frame. I don't want that. So I'm going to press 1, and it'll now be rated 1 star. It disappears, right? And then we can start the edit. So let me know as we go if you guys have questions, or if I'm going over something too quickly, or if you have suggestions. That's always good too. All right, so we're starting out. These are like test shots. I mean, the first shots, right? This is just the one NAND light, actually, I believe. So this is, you can see it in our eye, actually, if I click on this. Go here. Yeah, you can see just the one light. There's one below, but it's not on, or it's set very low, maybe. I think it's not on at all at this point. You can just see it reflecting below, but basically you're looking at one tube. It's pretty close, but this is not terrible. We're at a 60th of a second ISO 400 f4, right? So this is definitely, sharp and it's usable even with a single tube. So if you're not in a space where there's other light around, this would actually be fairly successful. All right, so my general process for editing is I go over here to this tab up here, which is, it looks like a little histogram, and I like to use my levels. The levels are what I prefer. Some people like to use curves. You can use both. I mean, let me know if you guys use curves or levels. I'm always curious because that becomes a conversation. But what I do is I usually use the levels, and I generally leave it on the RGB levels, and I just drag my bright level over until I'm looking for like my brights. Now that would be like the highlight on her nose here, in her lips. She's not super shiny, but like these areas here on her cheeks, those are my brights, right? That's what I'm looking for, and I'm watching those go up. till they get to the point where they're because I want contrast, right? So I want to bring them up until there's a nice contrast there. Just about starting to get overexposed in the brightest parts. That's kind of where I like to put it. Then I take my midtones, which is this one here, and my technique for it is I kind of shake it back and forth so I can kind of see where it's going. I don't just like move it one way or the other. And what I'm going to mostly do with this, generally speaking, is I'm usually going to move it back towards the lights. And that's going to help create some contrast here. But I don't want to go too far back because I'm looking at the skin tone. And then I go over to my blacks and I'm just going to give it a little bit of punch. So I'll drag that in a little bit. That's going to accentuate any shadows. It's going to bring down like dark points in our hair and stuff. And it's also going to, I have a vignette here, which you'll see in a second. It's going to make that a little bit more pronounced. The vignette's caused by the lighting I'm using because the way it's in here, I like it. If you didn't like a vignette, there's a vignette removal tool. We could try to see if that would work. Let's give it a shot. I think you go this way to remove. Nope, other way. You can come in and take it away a little bit if you like. So now if you do any of these kind of tools like a vignette removal, then you're going to want to go back and look at your image. Like the whole thing brightened up a little bit because it does like a wash. So I'm going to take my midtones again and readjust that. Whenever you're doing any kind of editing, it's never like a finished thing. You don't just do, generally you're not going to do a tool just one time and then walk away from it. You're going to, as you change other tools, you're going to come back to it and mess around a little bit. So this is now kind of where I like it. It's a little bit warm and saturated, which I actually like. If you don't like that, and this highlight's a little hot on her cheek. So we can come up here to the highlights recovery and just drag it down a tiny bit. Now you might be saying, well, why don't you just lower the white slider over here? But that'll bring the whole thing darker. So I'm just going to bring a little bit of highlight recovery, not too much. If you do too much, it'll start to get gray. You see how it's still white there? I'll do too much to show you. If you do too much, see how it's getting the white's getting gray. It almost looks weird. So you gotta play with that. And of course, obviously, if you went the other direction, you could really blow it out. So I'm just going to bring it in a little bit. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Let's see. You keep the 1 and 2 stars apart. I just keep them apart. I never delete them. I very rarely delete anything. Hard drive space is so cheap these days that it's just not worth my while to go and clean them out. Maybe I should do that. I would definitely, if I was going to throw anything away, I would throw out the 1 stars. That's why I do the 1 stars, where they're like literally a technical problem, a black frame, something like that. I'll put a 2 star on something I don't like, and I would never delete an image necessarily I don't like if it's technically okay, because sometimes you go back to something and you like it, It's been more than once where I've gone back to old edits and pulled up my 2 stars and found 1 or 2 images I really liked that I got rid of in the moment, because whatever is the best image has a lot to do with what you need at that time, what your mindset is at those moments, there's a lot of things going on. So, I never try to delete anything if I can avoid it, unless it's technically bad. And I mean technically as in like something wrong with it technically. Do I utilize the exposure warning? I don't really. I mean, you can. That's this here. And you can see that I'm popped a little bit, but that's set at like 85% or something. I'd have to check it. You could do that, but I find that it's not as pleasing. Like if I look at that and I go, oh man, okay, that's too much, then I bring it back down. I may not like where it's at. Like to me, that's way too flat. So for my personal taste, I don't think that it works for me. But if you like that, it's a way to make sure you're good. I actually like poppy highlights. Maybe it's because Seth says it's because I shot Canon for a bunch of years, but I think it's because I shot a slide film. So I like these highlights that snap, and it's hard to get those. Because remember, when we're editing photos like this, we're like, oh yes, I'm editing this. Let me look here at this highlight. But the reality is that people looking at this image are going to see it like, I can't make it any smaller as, but they're going to see it tiny. They're going to look at it super small in most cases. So, and if it's in a magazine or something, it's going to distort it anyways. So, little details, I don't see a big deal in dealing with that. How bright do I recommend the phone or monitor screen be? Oh, that's a good question. So as far as the brightness of the monitor, I've found, and I don't know who told me this, but I was told this a long time ago, and I set my monitor that way and it works. This is for a Mac. I go all the way to the brightest, and then I go down 3. I think this is like I don't know how many things there are, 10 of them. Let me see if I can actually adjust it. Oh, maybe it's like about 20. I go down 3 from the brightest, and that usually sets it about correct for me. Remember too, though, that once your monitor is set at the brightness you want it at, then you want to make sure you're calibrated for it, because that's going to matter too. Because if you don't, and then make sure that you save the images with your profile in it if you're going to do a monitor profile. But that all matters. And I'm assuming that you're talking about getting just the most perfect color. I've I've learned to let go a little bit on that. When you're going to give images, like I'm going to give this to Mia, and she's going to put them on Instagram, or people are going to look at them on random phones or computers that aren't calibrated and all this other stuff. They're going to look at my TVs. It's never going to look what it looks like on my computer. If this was a commercial job and I was getting it, to be put like printed, for like a poster or something, or art, then I would be more concerned with it being exactly color correct. But for a portrait that people are going to use online, I don't worry too much about that. Is there other way other than a color meter? There are spiders and stuff, and I actually have a spider thingy. I think it's called a spider. I'm probably saying the wrong thing, but I have the thing that you put on the screen, that I need to actually use and do a video for. I've just found that with this monitor, which you can't see, but the one I'm using, this is the Apple Thunderbolt display from like 2015, 2016. I find this to be the most accurate color monitor I've ever used. And that's why I still use it, even though it's Thunderbolt 2 and it's kind of clunky, and I have a 4K monitor over here. This 4K monitor, this Thunderbolt display, I love it. So when I'm shooting, I get it as close as possible on my MacBook, but then when I come here, this is when I look at my color. And I actually think the color is fine. I'm not worried about the color being 100% perfect, because this is a portrait, it's not a fashion shot. I set the Nikon at 5,000 usually, and that gives me the skin tones and stuff that I like. But again, it comes down to what you like. This is basically what she looks like. If I was to walk up to her, if you saw me in the street, this is what she looks like. Is there any other way as far as that? That's how you would know. But don't you push the highlights, and hold back with the tones, and then pull it back with the slider. I'm not trying to say what you mean. Don't you just push the highlights in tones? What do you mean, like in the curves? I don't use the curves, if that you're talking about. You can do that. And if I was doing that, I would do it exactly the opposite. Like, let's say I was doing this and I wanted it to be brighter. So forget about this highlight slider for a second. Let's say that was bright, and let's say I really liked it. I liked it to be like this. Like I wanted it like that. And I can see that this looks terrible, of course. And I can see that those highlights are totally blown out. And if I were to grab my highlight recovery and drag it back, it would look gray. So I'm like, what can I do? This is where I might use curves, because here curves are a little more precise. I can go into the Luma curves. Can you see that at the bottom of the screen? Yeah, okay. And oh god, I don't do this that often. So you grab this one, I think you drag it down. Is that right? Yeah, you can see how, like, if I drag it down and I'm lowering this white, probably didn't even need this one to be here. I can actually recover back that blown out highlight and still keep the image having that brightness. So if you wanted that brightness, but you needed the detail back, you could definitely do it. Use your curves to do that. But what we're finding here is, even with the Luma, my saturation is getting nuts at this point. So what I would have to do here is, let's see, let me put this down, is I would have to mess with my saturation, which I'll do in a second. So let's see, I go this way. I mean, there are people that are like masters of curves. You find yourself being better at the stuff you use more often, right? So you can see there that it's not gray, but I've got it back down where I want it. But now she's super, super red. I mean, the simplest way to deal with this is just lower the overall saturation, which would probably work fine. And now she's a bit brighter, like more punchy than I would want her to be. But if you wanted that look, but you still want a detail, which I've got there, you could do that. That is not what I'm going to do. Put this back where it was. Okay. Cool. And I actually had lowered the highlight thing because I was just showing you, but I don't actually think it needs to be lowered. So I'm going to leave that there. Let's see. I am feeling okay. Thanks, Dave. I hope you're feeling okay as well. No problem. I love to let you guys know how I do it. I am, yeah. If you watch these a lot, you probably see consistently things that that I do. I mean, everybody has their own way of editing, and you keep that in mind. There's no right way, in my opinion, to edit these images. You're going to do them the way that works for you. I find this works really well. For me, I go through, I do get my bit. Now this image is unique because I don't have the light. I'm testing the lights at this point, so I'm not going to like do a copy paste of any of my settings. But normally I would. I'll show you what would happen. So I'm going to hit Shift Command C. That's going to copy all my settings. And then I'm going to go down to the next image. So I think that was fine. And at this point, I've turned on the background light. So if I just go Shift Command V, I'll paste all those settings. And honestly, they're not bad. And it's usually a good policy in my mind to do that, right? Just to see if those settings work. Let's see. I'm going to grab my my mids, and I'm just going to tweak them a little bit brighter. Another thing that's important, I think, is when you're thinking about like tone, like skin tone and stuff, is to consider the environment. Like if I were to give you an exact number of where her skin is here, right? It would not match this one, even though I think they're both right. You know, in my opinion, they're both right. Because in this one, I've got her against a dark background. And because of that, her darker skin works better. If I put her darker skin against this background, she would start to look like she's underexposed. So here I'm actually going to make her slightly brighter, right? Just so that I can get it to look right in this scenario. So keep that in mind too when you're talking about exposure. I'm going to put my little thing here. You can see that little bright spot on her nose. There's detail there. It's totally fine. Works for me. Insofar as like any skin imperfections, you can do a lot of stuff in Capture One, of course, to do that. I generally do that stuff in Photoshop, but let's just take a quick stab at this. So if she just had a couple of imperfections in her skin, right, like there, and we want to clean them up, we definitely can do that. What we can do is, we've got our healing brush, just like you have in other software packages. And we can kind of just zoom into where we want to be. Let's say right here. And we're going to make it smaller, and now. Yeah, there we go. So, it tells you where it's getting it from. And you can change it, of course, if you don't like the way it looks. You can make them bigger and smaller. And this is actually all, I'll do a few. This is actually all on a layer. So let me show you how that works. Now, the thing is, if you were doing, let's say, a product, right? A product shoot, not a person, because they're going to move. But let's say you were doing a product shoot and there was a mark on the product, like a scratch on the bottle, and you were locked down on a tripod and things weren't going to change except maybe exposures and stuff. What you could actually do when you're editing is you could do that one edit there and then copy the settings just like you do any other setting and apply it to the next image. Obviously, with the person, I'm not going to want to apply all these levels. So we can see here, if we go over here on the side here, we have a heal layer, right? And we can see it there. So if I was to go like this, if I scroll over, I can see all the little heal marks. We can see it healed, but if I go like that, they're back, right? So easy enough to do. You can use Capture One to get a lot of this stuff done. I still lean towards Photoshop. I'm trying to get away from my addiction to Photoshop, but I find I can do it faster in Photoshop myself. But I'm still. Let's see. Oh, bright. Okay, no, I'm not down here. Okay. Like boost the highlights in levels or curves and then put them back with the slider. Yeah, exactly. So I took a Capture One course, like with Capture One, this is like a couple years back. And what the teacher recommended was to these things here on the side here, exposure, high dynamic range, clarity, like these sliders here are you should use them after you get everything else done. So what you should be doing when you're using Capture One, they said, was to do your levels, do your curves, do any of your color correction. Then once you get that all done, then you use the exposure area for the contrast and saturation. Then you use the high dynamic range to bring things back. You want to do that as after you do all your other stuff. Yeah, so you do the sliders last. So yes, that is 100% true. At least that's what I was taught. Click that like button. Thanks. Yes, I do appreciate that. Thanks for the videos like this. I got to bounce. All right. Cool. Oh, cool. Yeah. Nice. Well, I'm going to try to do this more often, guys. So if you're into this, let me know. Um, I've always got stuff to do, so I can talk to you guys while I do a quick edit. So yeah, we've got this. I mean, I'm not going to worry too much about. Okay, so let's say that we like all the settings we did here, but we didn't need to copy those heels. What you can do is you can come up here. Never do it this way, but so you can come up here and you go to copy adjustments. No, hold on, that's not. You go to copy and apply adjustments. And what happens is it gives you a list of all the adjustments you've done. You can just choose the ones you want. So I don't want the layer. So I'll take that away. I say apply. Now when I go and paste it over here, Shift Command V, I get all the stuff, but I don't get those heel layers. There's no heel layer over here. So this particular image looks a little bit brighter than the other one. So I'm actually going to come in here. And again, I'm not going to use my exposure. I'm going to use my midtone to kind of bring the midtones back. Because it's just allowing me to control a different part of the image as opposed to the whole image. And yeah, there we go. All right, that one looks pretty good. And now we have that one. We can, Shift Command C, because I made an adjustment there, paste that. And the reality is that you can actually, I was making a tutorial video, so we kept stepping away and all this other stuff. But if you were actually doing like a set of portraits where you were going to set up your light and then shoot like 20, 30 frames, you would be able to then just grab this one, let's say, and then just go down. You can grab a whole bunch of them. And we'll do it on this next step, but you can just go down and like apply the settings, right? And it'll apply to all of them, just like you can. I think it's called Synchronize in Lightroom. Okay. Cool. All right. So again, here I've added, if you watch the video, I've added a warm, like we had light in the background. Now we've warmed it up to kind of give like a warm overall feel to this. So I'm just going to paste the same settings and see what we got. All right. Again, this isn't terrible as is, but I'll look at it and see if I want to make any adjustments. I'm going to actually go a little bit brighter on my brights. Yeah. And a little bit brighter overall. And that's the mids right there. My darks in a little bit. And again, now I'm going to go to the highlight recovery because I want it bright, but I want the little bit of highlight back. Okay, so now I've got this where I want it. I actually don't like this image, but I figured I'd work on it. So Shift Command C to copy the adjustments. I'll hit number 2 to get rid of it. That's a blank. We'll hit number 2 again. This is where we're just kind of goofing around. This is kind of fun because she's making like a fun expression. So now I'm just going to go Shift Command V, and boom, I've pasted all the settings in. And now we're good. And you can tell at this point too that we've got both lights going on. We've got a fill light underneath, nice and bright. So we've got that. Again, if you were to use your highlight warning tool, you can see that this is blown out. But if I come back, if I actually take the exposure, I'll just use exposure tool. If I take the exposure, actually I'll use the highlights. I can use the whites tool as well. There's lots of different ways to do this. But the fastest way would be the highlights. If I bring the highlights back down to where they disappear, I can't even do it there. But I just, it just doesn't look the same to me. I don't like it. So for me, I like a little bit of pop. So I don't want to go by that because I want the exposure to be up. But here, I'll just do it without the tool on there because you can see. You see, it just doesn't, I don't know. Sometimes having all the detail is not really what you want in a portrait. So anyways, that's that one. That looks good. I like it. And here, now we've kind of settled into something. Okay, so this looks pretty good. I used a bit of a warming light on her because I thought that would look really good. But as I'm looking at it, I'm not sure I love the skin tone here. So I'm actually going to come in and mess with it a little bit. So again, the simplest way to do it is to just grab your white balance slider. I always try to use the simplest thing first, right? And just kind of slide it down and cool it off. And you might be happy with that. That might be fine. The other way we can do it is we can go into our color balance down here. You've got a master, the 3-way, which gives you shows you the midtone, the shadow, and the highlight. And then of course you can look at each one of these bigger if you want to mess with that. So what we want to actually change the color of is our skin tone, which is a midtone. So I'm going to go in the midtones, And I'm going to take the whole thing and I'm going to slide it away from the orange. So towards the blue, basically. Yeah, and I think that looks better than just changing the white balance of the shot. Now, then there's another way to do this as well. You can also, get rid of that. You can also come over here and you can go, you make it black and white. Color editor, skin tone. So if you go into skin tone, this is not something I use very much, but I get asked about it a bunch, so we'll mess around with it a little bit. So if we want to use the skin tone editor, what we do is we grab the little dropper and we select an area that we think is, the most equivalent to the skin tone, the average skin tone of her face. So here is pretty good on her chin. This gives us our skin tone. And then what we can actually do is we can, let's see, we can mess with the hue. I'm going to do it a lot, so you'll see first, and then we'll correct it. So we can drag the hue, and again, that's a lot. We're shifting it kind of to the pinky side. There we're shifting it like really to the warm. We could grab the saturation, which is probably what I'm actually going to mess with. That's a lot more saturated. That's a lot less, right? And of course, we can grab the lightness. And what's going to happen is there's going to be a combination of these things, really. There's also uniformity. We could get a more uniform hue, which is actually kind of nice for the skin tone. There's, again, saturation here for this is all part of the uniformity. So what I'm going to do here is I think the real thing is that it's a little bit more saturated than I'd like it to be. It's not so much that it's more warm than I want it to be. I think it's more saturated. So I'm going to actually just grab my saturation and I'm just going to drag it down a little bit until it looks about right to me. Then I'm going to bring it back a bit. So actually a little bit more saturated than I want. But I'm actually going to grab my lightness because that will also affect, has the same kind of vibe. I'll bring the lightness up a smidge. And again, I can bring it up a lot, but I just want to bring it up a little bit, just a tiny bit. And that helps kind of even out the skin tone so that we look at it, right? This is our before and after, right? So we can see here the skin tone looks fresh. The whole thing has a nice pop to it, and then, whereas, when I first looked at the image, I was like, this isn't bad. But then when you look at this, you can see how you've got that like sparkle with that pop of the highlights. The skin tone looks a little bit more kind of warm, but not over saturated. So now that we have that, and we like the way it looks, Shift Command C to copy those settings, and we'll go to the next image. Sometimes what happens is you do something like that, and then you're like, oh, I like that better. You can actually go back, right? I can actually apply it here if I wanted to. There we go. So go down to the next one. Boom, that looks good. And at this point, I'm just applying settings. And again, if you have a whole bunch that you shot in a row like I did here, you can literally just grab the whole bunch of them like that. And then you can just go Shift Command V. And we pasted those settings on all of those. Now I do my first edit while I color correct and stuff, so I don't want to just move on. I'll go through these now to see if I want to get rid of any of these. At this point, I would probably only get rid of there's one she's blinking. And again, I'm out of habit. I generally hit 2 there, but I would, you might want to hit I hit 2 on this one because somebody might like that picture, just not today. And I'm just going to move down through these and get rid of any of the ones that I don't feel like are good. That's an interesting thing, but I feel like her eyes feel like they're about to blink, so I'll get rid of that. Same thing there. This is actually a little bit blurry, but it's blurry in a fun that she's laughing way. So I'm going to put a 2 on it because I don't want to use it, but it's not one that I would delete if I was going to delete something. All right, so now we started messing around with color. And again, whenever I go into a new setup, I always just still put the first color I have on there, because why not, right? Sometimes it looks good. All right, that actually doesn't look terrible. So this is a good place to start. I'm going to come off the skin tone because I actually think that looks pretty good. Come back to here. But overall, looking at this, she seems dark to me. So, and again, sometimes it has to do with the color. There's a lot of things that can factor into the exposure. So we're going to come here. And I'm actually going to looking at this, I think what I want to do is, again, I'm just going to grab the mids and drag them. Yeah, okay, that's pretty good. I'm going to drag, now if I start to drag the mids up too much, see how that looks flat and boring? So I'm going to grab the mids and I'm going to drag it until it starts to look too flat. I'll bring it back a little bit. Then I'm going to grab my highlight and bring it up a tiny bit, because what we're looking for is contrast. And then I'm going to grab my darks and bring them in. And at this point, if I felt like the whole thing was still too dark, again, now I would go to, you could do curves, I suppose, but now I might go to like exposure, let's say, and just bring the whole thing up a little bit. And then even looking at that, I might go back and go, you know what, I'm going to add a little more darks. And that gets me basically where I want to be. Now I have used the exposure slider. And again, you could do it with the curves. If I went over here, let me reset my exposure. If I hit my curve here, I can actually get this to be a little brighter by going this way. Yeah, it's kind of popping the contrast too much for my taste. You know, the thing with the curve is that it starts to give a lot of contrast. See how it affects the overall image, whereas the exposure just didn't seem like it did that. Oh, you know, in the limit curve. I'm gonna reset that. Let me just do this again. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna put some spots in the middle because I think it was just doing too much. Let me just drag this mid up a bit. Okay, no, it's not terrible. But you can see now though my blacks are way too black, so I'm gonna have to come back up to my. This is what I was saying about if you do something, you got to go through multiple phases. And now if I'm going to do that, then now my midtones seem too dark. Now I'm here, and that looks good. You know, so now I've got a little bit of curve going on, and I've kind of come to the same place, which is not exactly the same exposure, but the same conclusion, which is that, oh, look at that in the background, is that this, you know, after looks much better than the before. Okay. Command Shift C. And we'll go down to the next one. Let me know if there's any questions or anything, guys. I see the chat's kind of chilling. You guys went for dinner or something. All right. Let's see. Okay. See, in this case now, I feel like this is a funny shot, right? But she's a little hot here. So what I'm going to do here, instead of tweaking, again, instead of doing all the tweaks to the exposure and stuff, I think I'm just going to grab using the curves. No, actually, that's not good. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do here is grab the midtone slider. There we go. That's better. Okay, so at this point, again, we just have a fun kind of shot. Whenever I make a change, I generally, oh, interesting, okay. I generally copy the settings, but I just did that there and then it was too dark. So I went back up to the one above it. I did it again. There we go. That's better. Okay, so that looks right. That looks right. Ooh, actually, that's a little bit hot for me, like the other one, so. Just in that midtone slider. That looks pretty good. Again, if you don't like these highlights on the nose and stuff, then you could always bring this back. But it does start to flatten the image, so it gets flat like that. You can bring that back, or you could grab your highlight protection tool there. Or the other thing you could do, I mean, if you really didn't like it, I actually like a little highlight, but if you really didn't like it, you could always do a healing brush on top of it. So we could do like a heal right here. Let's say on her nose, to get rid of that. And then if it is, in fact, you want a little bit, but not that much, you can actually come up here and you can lower the density of this. If I can remember how to do it. Lower the opacity. We can lower the opacity on that layer so we can bring it back a little bit. So if you are used to using like a photo editor, like you know, Photoshop or something, you can do a lot of that stuff here, you know, in here. I don't, again, it's not my main tool for that, but you definitely can get in here and dig into it. And it's kind of fun to mess with different tools that can do things in a different manner. Yeah, all right, good. Good. I mean, I do talk to myself a lot, but you know. All right, so now we've changed, the shirt's changed, everything's getting crazy. We've got a lot of different stuff going on here. This is where, once again, they're going to come down to the idea that like the right exposure is really just the one that you like, because this is all going to be all over the place. So I'm going to, once again, because this is so different, I'm actually not going to cut and paste. or copy and paste, I should say. I'm just going to come into this and start from scratch. So I'm going to come over here to my levels. I'm going to drag this slider over until I get the highlights where I want it. I feel like I might have a saturation issue here, so I'm not going to go too far. And then I'm going to move my mids over to about right there. And then I'm going to bring the darks in. That's it for this one. I think this one actually looks pretty good the way it is. Sometimes you don't need to do much. I will copy these settings though, jump down to the next one. I can tell this one's going to need more. This one's a little on the darker side. We had lights basically cycling, so they're going to, our exposure is going to be slightly different depending on where she's standing and how we're doing things. So again, I'm just coming down to each one. And like, you know, what's acceptable for a skin tone, right? It's like, it depends on what you're looking at. Sometimes, you know, something that you would consider way too dark for a skin tone actually is a proper skin tone in that situation. So we want to always keep that in mind. The main goal here is to just give ourselves a nice amount of contrast that will lead the viewer into the image, right? We don't want to flatten the images too much. So we want to make sure that, you know, just because your camera has this crazy dynamic range that you can have flat shadows and everything doesn't mean that you should. It just means that when you shoot, it gives you more leeway if you're in bad situations. But when it comes down to it, you actually want your images to have contrast and you want them to have some bite to them. You know? So each time I'm just copying and pasting the one from before, just in case that the similar setting works. I'm mostly just tweaking them a tiny little bit here, guys, just giving it a little bit. Like this one, because of the color, it just looks very flat no matter what. You can do the skin tone's weird. But again, we're going for weird color, so I'm not going to... Yeah, that one actually looks fine. Again, pasting. Fine. Fine. It's interesting how different colors seem to reflect differently on the skin and really change the overall vibe of how the thing sits, right? All right, so at this point, we're just kind of cranking through. You know, she's trying to be thoughtful looking off the side, but I feel like the expression's a little weird, so I'll get rid of that one. That one's soft. We're kind of in the middle of something. Sometimes I'll do something, you know, to get the model to like laugh or do something funny, and you can get good in between shots, but you can also get bad ones there too, so be wary of that. I'm essentially just, again, applying the same settings. All right, this one has an overall flatter feel, so let's mess with this one a little bit. If I want to add a little bit more contrast here, I'm actually going to use the curves for this. See if we can get a little bit more. So we can see what that's doing to the highlight. I always go too far and then I come back. I find that generally is a good policy. Otherwise you'll be like going tiny bit way too much. So again, I'm just kind of adding this like curve here. If you don't like, again, the highlights being that hot, then this is too much for you. But if you do, then you're good. Actually like the way I did with this now, but now I'm looking at her eyeballs. I don't really like her expression. So I'm actually going to hit a 2 on this one to get rid of it. But this one's similarly lit, so I can apply the same settings. Yeah, there we go. Okay, see, this one's too much. Now I'm blowing out the highlights way more than I want to. So I'm actually going to leave the curves where they are, and I'm going to drag the levels back because that seems like the right thing to do here. So it keeps that like contrast from the curves. You can see that punchy contrast, but it kind of lowers everything. The saturation is a little bit off the charts here, but I think, again, that works for what we're doing. Again, and I'm copying, when I make a change, I copy and paste. Here, I think the highlight might be a bit much, so I'm going to come in and drag that down a little bit. I'm actually going to brighten the whole thing up. Yeah, see, I went down with the highlight because I thought it was too bright, but then it looked too flat, so I'm actually going to go the opposite and actually brighten the whole thing up and let it kind of go with the flow. If you're going to have punchy highlights, it's got to make sense, right? So we have a lot of funky stuff going on here. There's like, you can see reflected in her lips. You can see the purple light coming from over here. We've got this like weird color light over here on her skin, like a little warm.
but she still has her eyes, you know, overall seem pretty white, you know, as far as it's clear. So it doesn't look completely crazy and wrong. This one there's a softer feel to it. So I'm gonna do the same thing and copy these settings, but when I paste them, I think they might be too much. Yeah, that looks too much, right? So what we're gonna do instead of this one is I'm just gonna start again. Every once in a while, it's a good idea just to start again. So we reset everything. Actually, you can just go Command R, and that actually resets everything as well. So here we are. It's got some funky color, but it's a little softer vibe. So I'm gonna start again. I'm gonna grab my levels, slide it over. I'm watching these bright areas, right? Watching this area here. I think this might be, is that a little soft? Nope, it's not soft. So I'm watching this bright area and I'm going to bring it up until, now I don't recommend that you do it so close like I'm doing here. Because what you want to do is look at the overall image and get the brightness. You don't want to know if that one little spot is overexposed. I find like that'll make you always go too flat. So I was just doing that to show you. So I'm going to bring that up to where I like it, where it's just popping the overexposure. Then again, I'm just going to grab my mids. In this case, I'm going to bring them a little bit flatter, I think. And then I'm going to grab my blacks and bring them in for contrast. And then again, I'll come back in and adjust the mids again. And that's basically where I like it. We got a tiny bit of exposure warning in an eyeball, so actually we're doing good there. And, you know, if we look at it, it's just basically giving a little bit of contrast. You see that difference there? It's like flat, contrast. It's not a huge thing. It's just enough to give that pop. So I'm going to copy these settings because it looks like we did a few in this setup. Yeah, that's pretty good. Ooh, nobody ever likes green on the face, but I'll leave it. I'm pretty liberal, I guess what I should say, with what I deliver to somebody, especially if we're doing it for fun or for a portrait or whatever. I don't worry too much about, you know, giving them a lot of pictures. You know, I know that comes up a lot as far as a question. I don't, you know, unless I'm just like, oh God, you know, I don't want my name associated with that because it's absolutely the worst thing in the world. I don't mind giving people whatever pictures because sometimes they like when I don't, and that's fine. People are allowed to like what they like. You know, they came and posed for you or whatever, or possibly they paid you. You know, so it's like give them what they like. Is not really a problem for me, but I do know that that can be a problem. Some people don't like to do that, but obviously weird ones I will do. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It has almost like a pop and blur feel to it because it doesn't. It's not. Yeah, it's a little soft. Yeah, it's got a little pop and blur. I can sense it. Yep, yeah, because you can see it up here in her hand. Yeah, no, it's not really a pop and blur because there's no flash, but it has that kind of slow motion feel. But it's sharp enough on the eye and stuff that it doesn't. So it almost feels like it's frozen. But it's not. I mean, it's soft everywhere. But I think it's fine. I actually kind of like it. Whoa, pixels. All right. All right. Let's see. I'm just doing a little tweak on that one because I actually like that image. I like that it's a little blurry. It's funny when you pick the one that you like is blurry, right? That's all right. I applied the same settings. It looks too bright now to be over here, so I'm going to go ahead and drop it down. Got almost like almost a little Rembrandt action going on there. Boom. Again, applying the same settings, just like that. I actually like a little bit of shadow. Ooh. Okay, I know that's a lot of shadow. I like a lot of shadow. It is interesting to look at this though and see like how the different colors affect like how your eye perceives the image. Because the skin, you know, will absorb certain colors and it'll mix with certain colors, and it really depends on the person. Right? So there's no exact perfect mix. Um, but it's interesting to see. Like here, I think it looks a little too flat because of the color. So I'm actually going to come here and bring this up a little bit, and then bring that there, and that one across. There we go. And again, I'm just adjusting the levels back and forth. Oh, that's a weird face. Boom, like that. That one looks kind of cool with the purple. Click we had two of them. And boom. Okay, same settings. That looks pretty good. I'm just going to grab my mids and drag them this way a little bit. You see how that black's getting really blocked up though? So I'll grab the black slider and slide it back. Yeah, that's not bad. That's actually better though. Because the color's different, I don't want to necessarily. We're going for this kind of weird floaty space vibe thing going on. So some of the expressions are kind of a little bit out there, which I think it kind of works for the color. Yeah. And again, if you were to measure any part of her skin, that's the weird there. Any part of her skin, not like that either. In any of these, they're not always going to work out to be exactly the same. And because it comes down to color and what looks better in the environment. Like here, if I kind of squint at it, that can sometimes help. If you squint at the image, it really pops out. I can really get her, like I can really see her. You obviously can't see right in my hand, but I can, over there. You can really see like her face pop out when you squint at it. And that's really what I want. I want her to come forward. And yeah, that's basically it. All right, so actually bonus. I forgot these were on here. We actually did another quick video using barn doors. Like I was wanting to talk about using barn doors, but what ended up happening was there was a screw up in the recording. So this will not be. Yes, you did hear it right. This will not be a video that you'll see because the video got screwed up. But I still get pictures from it. So this is basically using a barn door to shape stuff. This is the single dado light. We can see that it's a little on the cool side. So they look like they are all, well, maybe not, but let's go over here and see. I'm not sure I love the skin tone here. It feels like a little cool. And that's probably because I shot it at 5,000 and I'm using I think I might have been using a tungsten light or maybe not. Let's see. No, definitely not. I guess I just didn't have the thing set the way I wanted it. There we go. So in this situation, it might have been good to have done a color card. This wall is actually white. So even though it's not perfectly white, if you're a little bit concerned where your color seems off, you can sometimes just click on something that's white. Yeah, that actually worked pretty good. This now looks a little warmer than I would want it to be, and I can then adjust. And again, I'm adjusting to my eye. I want to get it as white as possible, like as clean as possible, color-wise. Yeah, that actually looks pretty good. You can usually get away with it now. If there's nothing white in the shot, obviously you can't do that. Or neutral, I should say. It doesn't have to be white, but it should be neutral. All right, so that's actually kind of an interesting shot, just contemplative. It doesn't look terrible. Let me jump over here. Actually, what I can do too, since I got that color the way I want it, let me just see if the next one. Yeah, okay. So I know this is going to be a good color. So what I'm actually going to do before I do anything else, I'm just going to grab all these and I'm just going to just paste the color onto them. That way I don't have to do that on every single one. And I know it's right. That way if I make other adjustments, I should say, I don't have to worry about, the color. All right. So again, simple. It's fine. These are really clean. These are pretty much perfect out of the camera. It's if you wanted to, if you're unsure, because sometimes you can have this feeling like I feel like I should do something. You can grab one and mess around with it, but like this is right out of the camera. And to me, that looks pretty perfect. If I wanted to make it bring her skin tone down a little bit, I could just grab this middle level slider and get a little bit of skin tone going on. Bring this up for the contrast. And there. So maybe that does look better. Let's see. Oh, well, the color's weird in that one too, but yeah. All right. You know what? Okay, I'm buying it. I actually like it. Okay, so there we go. So with those adjustments, I'll copy and paste. And paste. I don't think we're going to find a whole lot of stuff to do here, guys. So I'll go pretty quickly through it, just in case we find anything that's interesting. I'm not sure I love that expression. Boom. Again, this is just a single dado light with a barn door. I was just using it to shape the light. And okay, I don't know what we're doing actually at this point. Getting funky, I guess. I guess I put the light above her, do more like a beauty light. Now we can see here that we have an image that's really terribly exposed. So let's play around with it a little bit. This is super overexposed, right? We can see, right? I think I was trying to get that like that cinema light. Sometimes in horror movies they do that. But let's just see if we can recover this back a little bit. There's lots of ways to do it, but I'm just gonna start by just grabbing my mid-tone slider and see if I can get the rest of the picture to look right. Yeah, all right, and then fix some of it as we can see. And then I'll grab my highlight thing and swoosh, bring it down. All right. And I can also grab my exposure. That's not going to help me though. You can see the exposure is not doing anything for that highlight. So, and drop the whites a little bit. And we can see actually that this isn't even got that grayness going on because this shot actually does have actually enough information in it. So I'm not sure I love that it's a line down her nose. So I probably wouldn't save this, but it's interesting. It's interesting to know that you can pull stuff back if you really needed to, right? Okay, I'm not loving that for the same reason. Whatever I was doing there, I do not like. Clearly I was messing around, and there we go. All right, now we're back to, oh, hold on. I'm going to come up and take the better lighting from here, the better exposure here. Do that. Okay. Interesting. Huh. Yeah, I guess we were going for some kind of harsh. I forget what we were doing at this point. Messing around, I guess. Oh, yeah, we can see we're actually using multiple lights because I have another light here. I think this is before we did the barn door thing. I think I was just messing around. That's kind of an interesting shot. Huh. All right. No. Oh, interesting. Huh. There we go. I think I'm using the barn doors to catch this part of her face, I guess. Is what I'm doing here. I must have been using two lights. Yeah. So here I'm looking at it and it's a little hot. But the thing is, I kind of want her to be a little bit hot. In fact, I think with this, I may have been thinking about, because it looks like I'm lighting it for black and white. So maybe I was thinking that. Let me see how it looks in black and white. Yeah, see how it looks better in black and white. Let's just see if it's, yeah, this is more like how I would light something in black and white. But I'm not sure I like it. Generally, once I see something in color, this is a mistake on my part, right? Or I don't know what that means. What voorong? Boom, they're gone. All right. Okay. Let's go back here. I'm gonna go back and bring back the original settings here. All right. And let's see what we like. The color is good here. It's a little on the hot side, I think. Bring it down a bit. There we go. But I still want contrast, so I'm gonna add a little bit of this black. Yeah. Cool. That's an in-between shot. Now, well, look at that. That's kind of interesting. So again, I'm just pasting the settings. These are basically just test shots of things to see what we like. This looks interesting here. So again, we're really messing with the edge of the exposure here. This is the kind of thing where like it's not like a correct exposure anywhere, but it's got a certain look to it that can kind of work. Yeah, there we go. Don't love that. Don't love that. Unfortunately, these data lights can actually, if people aren't used to it, they can have a hard time getting like a decent expression because their eyes get so tweaked. So you end up shooting a lot of shots where they're like half blinked and stuff. Okay. Cool. There we go. Yeah, these are interesting. Kind of fun experiments here. Yeah, that's it. I think we're messing with it a little bit. See what we get with some barn doors. But that's basically where I would leave them to start with. If I really wanted to mess around with them more, I could get in and start messing with the color and stuff like that. But I think at this point, that's probably good. Now, the next step here would be to take select them all again, and then hit 4 stars. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go through them again really quickly. I'm going to set my thing to 4 stars or higher. And then this is where you just go by gut. I'm going to put my finger on the number 3 and my other finger on the down arrow. And I'm literally just going to, there's 100 pictures. I'm going to go through these in like less than a minute. And if an image doesn't immediately like jump out to me as being at least good on some level, I will dump it. Those are just kind of fun. So again, and I mean good for the purposes of our use. Not loving the way her head is positioned in those ones. Yeah, these are good. I actually really like these contrasty ones personally. That feels a little too contrived. That one too. A little too bright. I like the purple. The green doesn't work for me at all, which of course I knew it wouldn't. So we'll get rid of those. These are kind of fun. That one's a little bit weird. Okay, nope. Green, nope. Green, nope. Boom, boom. That's good. I like the purple. I like the purple and I like the red. Those two I definitely like. So green, nope, nope. And again, you can always go back. So if you overdo it and you end up with no pictures, actually that one's green, but I like it. If you get to this thing and you have no pictures left, then you can just always go back and there. Yeah, okay, cool. I think these really simple ones are fine. I think when we started getting real experimental with the light, it probably is not going to be my favorite. Like this one I like because it's kind of creepy. That is also creepy. I like it. No. The light's too low on her forehead there. That one's better. That I like. That's interesting. No. Yes. This is also kind of interesting, right? There's 2 of them, so which one's better? Slight tilt to the head is better to me. That's good. That's good. There we go. So now I've got rid of a third of the images right there. And if you wanted to give them even less, voltages, they're so fun, right? And if you really give, if it was somebody who wasn't like, you wanted to give them as few as possible, the next step I would do is I would go down and mark everything 5 stars and do the same thing one more time. But I think this is fine. We've given her 68 images is plenty, so I'm going to select them all. And now one change for Capture 122 is that they don't have the little export screen anymore. They just have this little icon up here. And when you click on it, it opens up your little export, like an export dialog basically. And I'm going to do, I've talked about this before, but I have several already preset. So models Dropbox. What that does is it creates, in my Dropbox, I have a folder called models. And within it, it creates a document, a folder with the, a subfolder with the document's name. So it's going to be, I always name my files after the subject, right? So it's going to be whatever name on it. And it's going to cut these down to JPEGs. They're 2,000 pixels on the long edge, which is plenty fine for most people. And then when I hit this here, export, boom, it's just going to bang them out. And what happens is it goes back to your main screen and it gives you a little dialog down here in the corner that it's doing it. So hopefully it doesn't screw with the, yeah. OBS does not like when you do a lot of weird stuff. So hopefully it doesn't screw too much with it. Let's jump here. Hopefully we don't lose the stream. So yeah, guys, thank you for tuning in. I see myself jumping, so hopefully I'm not too jumpy. Shouldn't have hit the download thing. Thanks for tuning in. We'll try to do more of these. Let me know if you're seeing this after the fact. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more of these. I'm going to try to, I'll keep them on Fridays, but I'll try to do them every once in a while, maybe once a month or something. We'll see. On Fridays, we can be editing images, or we could just be chatting, whatever you guys want and you think would be good. So I appreciate all the support. Next week, which is January 20th, I will be live at 5 o'clock on Adorama TV doing a speedlight demo. So please join me there. And yeah, we'll see you. Have a good night, guys. There we go.